Yes,
Right.
we are. So let me do this. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all those assembled. This is my John Rowe imitation. Welcome to World Storytelling Cafe, Stories for Children. And today we have the man of the man, the teller of the tellers, the captain of Get a Word in Edgewise, and I always mess up the title. We have the one, the only Mike Rust. And joining us also is John Rowe. But Mike, it is now yours. You have the mic.
Thank you very much, John. It's lovely to see you both, Baba, and to you, John Rowe. You've just come in. And Louis, here's a wave from Shropshire over to Lincolnshire, which is a really nice place. So I'm going to start off with a little tune that we learned over the years.
Hold on, Mike. Are we on
Yes, we are, John. I just
Facebook
took
yet?
care of that.
Everything's cool, John. I'm all set to go. Okay.
Yeah, but is everything on Facebook?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight it's children's stories from none other than Mike Rust, director and founder of Get a Word in Edgeways and veteran of many, many festivals around this country and sometimes the world. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, John. I am privileged today, Louis, to have two introductions, isn't it? I must be really famous. I'm going to start off with a little tune. Here we go. Right, so I'm going to start off today. So who knows what the name of the man in the moon is? Now, it doesn't matter where you are. I thought we'd start with this one because this is the World Storytelling Cafe, but everybody in the world can always see the moon. And everybody knows there's a man in the moon. And when you look up sometimes, since we were little boys and little girls, wherever you are, in the northern hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, wherever you are, you'll look up one day and you'll see the man in the moon. And I don't know if any of you know what his name is, but his name is Mark. And he was a king a long time ago, King Mark. And he was king of Cornwall. Now, Cornwall is like the bit on the bottom of the United Kingdom and England out to the left. And it's basically a peninsula where my brother lives now and my nephews and things. And it's stuffed full of some of the nicest pubs and some of the nicest beaches and some of the nicest restaurants and some of the nicest pints of beer. And they can sing songs and they have poetry in their heart. And once a long, long time ago, because I'm a well old person, I'm nearly as old as John Rowe. It's a well old person I am now, that I was down there and I was 12 years old and I got what they call sunstroke. Now, I don't know if everybody knows what I don't think they have sunstroke anymore. I think they call it something different. But it means you've been out playing on the beach all day and you got too hot. And I was burnt on the skin and everything else. And I went to bed and I was lying in bed shivering away. And my Auntie Mary came up. Now, Auntie Mary was, we were staying with Peter, who had a farm on Bodmin Moor, and his wife, and she was Peter's mother. And everybody called her Auntie Mary, including me. And she sat down, she brought me a cup of tea, and she looked out the window and she could see the moon. And there was a man in the moon. And she goes, Michael, she said, because my friends call me Mike, but if Auntie Mary wants to call me Michael, she can. It's like me mother, Michael. Anyway, she said, Mike, do you know who that is in the moon? And she told me this story. Because King Mark I of Cornwall, he died. And so King Mark II, you know what it's like. We've just had it happen. The old Queen Elizabeth, she died. And so now we've got Charles I. It sort of comes down in the families. And they called him Mark II. And he sat on his throne and he looked round the kingdom of Cornwall. And he goes, what are they going to remember me for? My dad, because his dad, the first King Mark, was really quite a good king. And he just got everything right all the time. And he'd avoided wars, and they didn't have complaints about fishing too much and all that kind of stuff, you know. And so he said, what are they going to remind me of? And just then he looked up, and on the tower, the moon went through the tower. You know, when you sat down and you can look up into the sky, and sometimes the moon or the sun goes behind the building. It's just the way that the angles. And that's what happened to him. He turned round and he said, look, the moon. If I stood on that tower, I could have touched the moon. And they all looked at him, and they all looked up. And sure enough, it did look like that was a tower, and there was a moon, and the moon did look like it was by the tower. So he said, right, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to be the first king of Cornwall. I'm going to be the first king of England, Wales and Scotland and the British and Irish Isles and all the islands and everything else. I'm going to be the very first one to touch the moon. And he went up and he stood on the tower, and he leapt up and he went like that. And he reached out to see if he could touch the moon. And the moon seemed a little bit further away. And he said, go and get me a table. And they went, what? And I said, go and get me a table. And they got this big old table, this really big, solid old oak table. It was the dining room table. It's where 12 people could sit in a square. So there was 3 people, then 3 people, then 3 people, then 3 people. And they got this great big solid oak, English oak or Cornish oak table, and they plonked it right on the top of the tower. And he hopped on to it, and he stood up, and he reached up into the sky and said, it's only just there. If you get me a chair, I could reach it. And they went and got him a chair. And he stood, and there was a table, and then there was a chair. And he stood on the chair, and he reached up and he went, I need more. Go and get me more furniture. Well, they went and got all the chairs and all the tables from all the castle. And the castle was a big castle. And they put all the chairs and they put all the tables together. And they got higher and higher and higher and higher. And then he stood on the top chair and he reached up and went, I need to be a bit further up. What more have you got? And they said, well, we've only got the beds and the wardrobes. And they said, oh, we'll go and get the beds and the wardrobes. So they got all the wardrobes. So now there was this great big oak table and all the chairs. Now they started putting the wardrobes on top of it. There's one wardrobe, and then another wardrobe, and then another wardrobe, and then another wardrobe. And the whole thing was going up and up and up and higher and higher and higher. And he was stood on the chair at the very top. And he kept on saying, I just need to be a bit closer to the moon. Well, they said, well, we've run out of chairs, and we've run out of tables, and we've run out of wardrobes, and we've run out of beds. So what are we going to do now? He said, well, you'll have to go into the courtyard and get everything in the courtyard. And they said, well, you mean the carriages? And they went, yes. So they went in and they picked up the last bed and they put a carriage underneath it. It had 4 wheels and it didn't have any horses. So they just plonked, and he was still right up there. And they said, you go and get more. And they got more carriages. And they were doing it crossways. One this way and one that way and one this way and one that way. And every time it was going higher and higher and higher. And he was stood on the chair at the top going just a bit higher. And they looked up and they could hardly see him by now. He says, go and get more stuff. And he went, what? Go and get more stuff. And they went, instead of the castle, they went into the town. And they got all the stuff that they can move in the town. And they kept on picking the pile of stuff and putting another chair underneath them. They got the pub and they got the pews out of the churches. And they pulled them up upside, and they were going higher and higher and higher. And in the end, there was nothing left in the whole of the town. And there was nothing left in the whole of the castle. It was just there in a great big pile going up into the sky. And there was the king, King Mark, and he was going, get more stuff, get more stuff. And so we got no more stuff. He said, I'm king of the whole of the Cornwall, not just Bodmin. Go and get it from all the other places, from Abergissey and down in Penzance and St Ives and all the other places, Padstow and Campbell and Truro itself. And that's what they did. They went all the way out, all the way over Cornwall, and they brought everything back. And he was picked it up, and they put something else underneath it, and they picked it up and put something else under it. And he kept on saying, just a bit closer, just a bit closer. You have to be a bit closer. Well, In the end, they had nothing left. And they said, all we've got is all the fishing boats. And they said, the fishing boats? He said, go and get them. I'm nearly there. I don't need much more. I can see the moon. It's getting closer every time I go up. You have to go and get some more. I want to be famous for touching the moon for the first time, so people will remember me. And I'm the king, do as you're told. So they went and got all the fishing boats, and they came along and they put the fishing boats upwards, and they picked it up and they put another one on, and they put another one on, and they put another one on, and in the end they had nothing left. The last fishing boat was there, and there was this great big pile. And he said, you need to get me closer. I can see it. I can nearly touch it. Go and cut down all the trees. And they said, we don't want to cut down all the trees. He said, yeah, they'll grow again. Go and cut down all the trees. I want to be the first person to touch the moon. So that's what they did. They went out and they found all the trees and they cut them down, but they left 3 or 4. The old yew trees around the churches and things, they wouldn't cut them. They said, we're not going to do that. But they got some smaller trees and they put them all on one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. And they got right to the very top. And they turned around and they said, we got nothing left. He said, yeah, I'm just there. I can see it. It's only a couple of feet away. It's about 1 meter away. You have to get me closer. And they said, we've got nothing left. There's nothing we can do. And so he shouted down, he said, pick the table up. And they said, what? And they said, pick the table up. Get all of you to stand around the table, pick the table up. If you can pick the table up a foot, about 1/4 meter, a foot, I'm sure I can just touch it. I'm that close. So they did. So they picked the table. But as they picked the table up, there was a wobble. And there's a wobble, it went up the whole pile. And then it went to a little twist. And then there was a wobble. And then you could see it all shaking and shaking and shaking. And it went straight up. And it was like a snake. And it was just getting, it got to the top. And just as it got to the top, they all heard a voice going, yeah, I made it. And then it all came crashing down. Everything came crashing down into a great big pile. And it covered the whole of the castle. Well, they spent a week sorting everything out. They put the tables on one side, and they put the chairs over there, and they put the wardrobes over there, and they put the beds over there. And they got everybody to come and pick everything. They got the wood, and they chopped all the wood up into firewood, and they gave it to all the widows and the widowers and things like that. So nobody had to worry about firewood for the whole of the winter. They took all the ships and they took them back to the harbours and gave them back to the fishermen and everything else. And all the time they were looking and they were looking and they were looking and they couldn't find the king, King Mark. And in the end, they all sat round and they went, well, where is he? We don't know where he is. He's disappeared. And then a lady, she was only a sort of 16, 17-year-old. She wasn't very old. And she looked up into the skies and she went, I can see a man in the moon. And sure enough, there was a man in the moon. And he had 2 eyes and a bit of a nose and a great big smile. And he was smiling down on Cornwall as if he was trying to wave. And he was saying, I made it. I'm here. I'm the man in the moon. I'm King Mark of Cornwall and I touched the moon. Look at me. So when you see and you look up into the moon, and there's a man, because he's really happy, and he's looking down. He does look at Cornwall first, because that's where he came from. But what he likes doing is looking to all the children. And if he can, now you have to stare very closely when you see this, because sometimes you wink. Sometimes when you look up, and particularly if you're a little boy or a girl, and you can't go to sleep at night, and they say, why don't you count sheep or things like that? Well, just look up into the man in the moon, and you'll know that there's King Mark up there, and he'll look after you. For that night, he'll be there, and he'll be smiling down on you, and you don't have to worry at all, because the man on the moon, he's got his eye out on you. And if you look really closely, just as you're going to sleep, just as you're nodding off, sometimes you'll catch him winking away. And that's the story of the man in the moon. Yeah, so It's been a long time in coming. Oh, Despina's here. Hello, Despina. How are you? You look as if you've been at a swimming pool or something. Hey, look at this guy. I don't know if anybody else can see, but there's Despina, and she's from Syros in Greece, and she looks as if she's on the beach. And she's a couple of hours ahead of me, I think, so it's probably evening eating, which will include a glass of wine, which she's hiding behind the back. What do you think? Right. So there was a little story about the man in the moon. And I thought we'd just get started because everybody in the world can see the moon. Right. So children's stories. Right. So now then, I always like this one. So, but it's a joining in one, this one. So if you're listening to this, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in the car, you're on the train, I've got Baba and I've got John and Louis, and I'm sure that they'll both join in. Because once upon a time, a long time ago, about 1956, when John Rowe was a teenager, he turned round and there was a television. And there was when televisions were new in this country, and they were sat in the corner, and he had a vase on top of his head. And all the kids were just going off to school. It was first thing in the morning. And so the TV said, where you go, because when you go away, and I'm just sat here all by myself, and then you come back in the evening and you all sit and you're here with me all evening. But between now and then, I'm just sat here by myself with this vase on top of my head. And the cleaner comes in and she cleans the house and she cleans me. And the parrot, he'll say something. So where do you go? And the kids went, well, we go to school. And he said, what, school? And he said, well, we go to school and we learn stuff. And what do you learn? We learn all sorts of stuff. We learn geography and we learn English and we learn maths and we learn languages like Greek and French and Italian and things like that. And the TV said, well, I'd love to do that. Can I come to school? And they all looked at her and went, I don't know. Can you come to school? And they went, Mum. And she went, what? She said, the television wants to go to school. And she went, well, it's a new television. We haven't had it long. It says it's bored. Well, I suppose so, she said. Anyway, I'll make you a packed lunch. So they took the bars off and they unplugged the TV. So the lead was like a bit of a dog lead, you know, it was just a lead, you see, and the kids there. Now, when you go to school, I don't know, Baba, if you can remember, did you have a bag that goes on your back or did you have one that you hold in your hand? Can you remember?
Neither. We carried our books by hand. We were very primitive then.
Oh, right. Okay. So where Baba came from, they hadn't invented bags and knapsacks. And so, John, can you remember, did you have a bag on your back or did you hold it or did you have a duffel bag? You remember duffel bags? Oh, you're on mute. Yeah. No, you're on mute, John. It doesn't matter. So you have to unmute yourself. Despina, I don't know.
A duffel bag.
A duffel bag.
But at primary school, we never had to take anything.
Right. Well, we had a duffel bag, and they all had duffel bags. And so the mum said, right, well, I've got an old duffel bag here. So she got a duffel bag, and she put some lunch in it for me, an apple, and a Kit Kat, and a few sandwiches, and everything else. And they put it on the back, and they all went into school. And so they had the leader, and they walked in, and they went up to the teacher, and the teacher, who was Miss Stubbins, said, this is TV. He wants to come to school with us. And she went, well, okay, go and sit down over there. So TV went and sat down next to the little boy. And they were sat there. Well, at first they had maths and things like that. But just after lunchtime, they had singing lessons. And they decided to start singing, you see. Now, I don't know what songs you can remember when you was at school, but one of the ones, and I was never very good at singing, but it was all the little bubbles in the air. Da 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 da, all the little bubbles in the air, da 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 da, and they're all singing away and everything else apart from TV. TV wasn't saying anything. So the teacher went, stop. And everything stopped. And she went, TV, why aren't you singing? And do you know what the TV said? The TV went, because it's a stupid song. And Miss Stubbins, her eyes went white, and there was steam coming out of her ears, and she stood up and said, "TV, come and stand in front of my desk." And TV went up and there and stood, and it was standing on its two legs. And you know when you put your hands behind your back, Bubba, and you turn, and your fingers, you're going da 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 da. You know when you're really upset, and the teacher can't see, and you're standing there, and it was standing there with its two legs, and it was twisting its fingers backwards and forwards, and it was trying to sort of not look at the teacher and look at the teacher at the same time. And she went, "TV, that was a very naughty thing to say. We don't have that in my class. You will now go back and sit in your seat, and if you don't join in, you'll have to sing the song all by yourself, standing on the desk." TV went, "Yes, ma'am." Turned round and walked and sat down, and she sat down, and they started singing "Oh, the Little Bubbles" song again. "Oh, the little bubbles blowing in the air, da 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 da, ba 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 ba." And TV wasn't singing. And she went, "Stop! TV, stand up, stand on the desk." And TV stood there and stood on the desk. And she said, "Now sing Little Bubbles in the Air all by yourself." And you know what TV did? TV did this. Black and white, blue and green, toffee paper. 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 And all the class started joining in. The whole class started joining in. And then, blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. And once they started, they couldn't stop. And they all stood up and they were all singing it together. And Miss Stubbins said, "If you're going to be like that in my class, go and stand in the corridor." And they all went and stood outside. And there was a long queue of them. There was about 30 kids. And they were all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. And the deputy headmistress came past. And she said, "Why are you in the corridor singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper?" And when she started, she couldn't stop. And she was standing there. So now there were 30 kids. There was the deputy headmistress, and they were all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Then the headmistress came past. And she said, "What's the deputy head and the class, or 30 of them, all doing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper?" And as soon as she started singing it, she couldn't stop either. And so there were all of them. So there was the headmistress, there was the deputy headmistress, there were 30 kids, and they were all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. So the headmistress, she thought, well, we can't stay here doing that. So she walked into the playground. And in the playground, there was the playground keeper. And he looked up because he was washing the playground. And he said, "Why are you all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper? Blue and green, black and white, toffee paper." So he joined in. So there was the playground keeper, the headmaster, the headmistress, and 30 kids, and they were all singing it all together. And they all went out into the road. And just walking down the road, there was a policeman. And he looked round, and he said, "I say, why are you all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper?" So as soon as he said it, he couldn't stop saying it. So he joined in. And so he was leading. He said, "There's only one place to go. We'll go down into the middle of the town, and there'll be the mayor. And the mayor will know how to put a stop to this." So there was a policeman, and he was marching down the road. And there was the playground keeper. There was the headmaster. There was the headmistress. And there were 30 kids. And they were all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Well, as they went down into the town, they've got a fireman. And he said, "Why are you doing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper?" Then there was an ambulanceman. And he came in and he said, "Why are you doing that?" And then there was a shopkeeper. And he said, "Why are you doing that?" And they so all had to sing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. And they all walked into the mayor's office. And the mayor said, "What are you all doing standing in my office singing blue and green, black and white toffee paper. And they couldn't stop. And he was there. So there was a whole crowd of them. And do you know who there was? So let's go through them. There was the mayor, then there was the ambulanceman, and there was a fireman, and there was a policeman, and there was the playground keeper, and there was the headmaster, and there was the headmistress, and there were 30 kids. And they were all singing it together. And the policeman and the mayor said, well, I don't know how we're going to stop this. There's only one person who can stop that, and that'll be King Charles III of England. And he's in Buckingham Palace, and he's down in London. We have to go and get the train. So they went to the train station, and there was the train master and the station master. And he said, there's a train coming to London in a minute, but why are you all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper, blue and green? And the train came, and the train driver went, this is the funny load of customers I've ever had. Why are they all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper? So now there was a train driver, there was the station master, there was the mayor, there was the ambulanceman, the fireman, and the policeman. And there was a headmaster, there was a headmistress, and there was 30 kids, and they were all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Well, every time the train stopped, it stopped at the station. And every time it stopped at the station, everybody at the station went, why is everybody singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper? And once they said it, they couldn't start it. And they all went to their homes, and by the time they got to see the king in Buckingham Palace, they turned round, and the whole of the country was singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper, blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. They all went into the palace, and they looked at the king, and the king said, why is the whole country singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper? And when he started, he couldn't stop either. And he turned round to Camilla, and she couldn't stop. And soon the whole palace was doing it, and the whole country, and there was Scotland, and there was England, and there was all the island of Ireland. Cornwall was included, everybody else, and they were all singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper. Now, it was just on the same day, curiously enough, that NATO were having an exercise with their navy. And so the navy of all the different countries in Europe were all going around the outside of the British Isles. And joining in was the Americans, the Russians, and the Chinese. Right? And they were having one of those exercises when they all talked to each other, when like they were friends and everything else. And when they all turned around and said, why is everybody singing blue and green, black and white toffee paper? They couldn't stop either. Then they all went to their homes. And within 48 hours, the whole of the world, that's the whole of the United States of America, the whole of Africa, everywhere else, they were all singing blue and green, black and white toffee paper. But one person, there was one person that wasn't singing it. And do you know who that was? Do you remember who that was? Yeah, remember who that was? That was Miss Stubbins, the teacher. Because she was still in the classroom wondering where her class had gone. And she walked out, and she could hear everybody singing blue and green, black and white, toffee paper, blue. And she went, stop it, all of you. And that stopped it. Everybody stopped it. And they all turned round. Now, everybody had to go back to their homes. So the train driver, he brought everybody back up to the station, and he said, is this going to be all right now? And they said, yes. And they turned to the station master, and he said, yes, it's going to be all right. And they turned to the mayor, and he said, yes, it's going to be all right. Then they turned to the ambulanceman, the fireman, and the policeman, and said, yes, it's going to be all right. Then the headmaster and the deputy headmistress, and they all went back into the classroom, and the 30 there, and TV, and they all sat down there, and Miss Stubbins looked at them all and said, you've been very, very naughty. It's time for you to go home. But there's one thing that we're going to have to do. And she wrote a letter to the king, and the king wrote a letter to everybody else. And the letter said this: you can't have TVs in schools. If you're going to have a TV in school, it is better to have a storyteller instead. So that is the reason why they don't have TVs in schools anymore. Because they have a TV in the school, it won't sing. It's going to go blue and green, black and white, toffee paper, and look at all the trouble that's going to cause. Right, so how are we doing for time?
You got caught. 15 minutes to go.
15 minutes to go. Right, okay. Right, so now we are talking about a seriously long time ago now, because we're talking about 671. Now that here is when after the Romans left, when everybody else was turning up. Because if you want to have a country, you want to sit on a country that's been invaded a lot of times, come to England, because we've been invaded by everybody at one point or another. Everybody's come here. Everybody likes coming here best, which is where it is. Anyway, her name was Milburger, and she had a priory. And the priory was in a place called Much Wenlock, which is where I live, where John has been and Baba hasn't been yet. So, and it's got an old priory, and she was sat there. And now they call her Saint Milburger nowadays, but she's not a saint anymore. She wasn't in the story. It was before she was a saint. She was just an abbotess, they call it. Like an abbotess is someone like a headmistress of a priory. She's the one that's sort of in charge of everything, right? Now, she went off on a little horse, and it's a really nice white horse. Now, it doesn't matter about this story, but she was a very, very bad horsewoman, because she fell off. Every time she fell off a horse, she banged her head. And every time she banged her head, that made a well where the water would come out the ground and people could get the well. And it would be a holy well. And she's got 5 of them. So she wasn't a very good horsewoman. There's 2 in Much Wenlock, and there's 1 up in the Clee Hill, and there's a couple down the road and all sorts of things. Anyway, so this day she was being really, really careful. And she came into a place called the Apedale, which is where I live. Now, the Apedale is like a valley. It's what we call them in England and stuff like that. And there was all the people there. And there was nothing to eat. There was a load, far more people there should be. And they'd eaten all the food, and they were having to ration all the food out and everything else. And she went over into the Corkdale, which is the next dale over. It's about 2 miles away. And there was all this food there. It was all growing on chapels on the trees, and pears, and all the corn was growing, and the barley was growing, and cabbages and cauliflowers and all the vegetables. And there was nobody there. And they were just lying around in the field. So she went back and said, why don't you all go into the Corkdale and get the food? Why are you all standing here hungry and thirsty and really upset? And she said, it's the snake. He said, what snake? He said, there's a great big snake. It's not even a snake, it's a serpent. It's that big. And he said, it goes through, and you go into the Corkdale, and it bites you. Look, and you look around, it bites the kids, and the kids have got bites all over them, and arms and everything else. And she said, we're going to hear, it is better if we just ration the food that we've got, and we'll all go a little bit hungry, and we have to go and face the snake. Well, Milburger said, well, we're not having that. And she got on the horse, and she went, and she got off the horse, and she started marching up and down the Corkdale. You know what a sort of an elderly lady is when she's cross. She's marching around all the places. Come out here, you coward! I'm looking for you, this snake. And this snake turned up, and it was about 7 foot tall. It was just like she limped up and grabbed hold of it, turned it upside down, and she started shaking it like this. So what do you think you're doing? And the snake went, she said, well, what do you think you're doing? I'll let you speak, but I'm not letting you go. And she said, well, the snake said, well, it's only a bit of fun. I've got no sense of humour, that lot. She said, you really scared them, and the kids, you've been biting kids and everything else. What you are is a bully, and I don't like bullies. So this is what we're going to do. And she grabbed over, she tightened it again, and she reached in, and she poked out its bite, and she picked it up and she stuck it in her pocket and said, well, see how you get on without a bite, without you scaring everything. And she picked up the serpent and the snake, and she chucked it all together away, and off it went, and it went slithering away. And she went over to the oak there, and she said, it's okay, I've had a really stern word with that serpent. He's not going to do it again, and I've taken his bite off him, and I've put him on the naughty step, and I've given him a good telling off. So he's going to be okay now. So you can go back over there, and you can have all the food and everything else, and everything's going to be fine. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea in the priory in Church Green, under the tree. I like doing that. And off she went and did that. So all the people, they went back into the Corkdale. Well, all the kids were running around, and suddenly there was this snake, and they saw the snake, and they stopped. because they were afraid of snakes. And they looked at him and went, he hasn't got a bite, he can't bite us anymore. Oh. And they all looked at him and went, oh. So they went and started poking it with sticks. And then they rolled it up like a big sort of in a wheel, right? So they got his head and they got his tail and they tied him together and they put some sticks in to make him like a web. And they started rolling him up and down the court there with sticks and things like that. And this horse, every time it went round on its head, it went round dunk, round dunk, round dunk, and it gave him a headache. And it was horrible. And when they finished with that, he went and hid behind a tree. And just as he was going to sleep, they came and found him again. And they tied him to a branch and they put him backwards and they picked up some rotten potatoes and they started throwing them at him. And he was so unhappy, he started crying. And he was crying and he was crying. And they undid him and he went and hid behind this wall all by himself. And he was just crying and crying and crying. And he said, there's only one thing to do. And he carefully at night, without anybody seeing him, he went all the way up through Brockton and through Bolton, and he went down and he went and waited underneath the big yew tree outside the abbot's house in Much Wenlock, making sure no one could see him. And he was the most unhappiest of snakes you've ever seen in your life, a serpent that was crying a lot. Anyway, the abbot came out this morning, Milburger, and now what she did every time the sun came up was go and feed all the birds. And so she'd come out every morning and all the birds would sit around in all the trees. And there would be the blackbirds and the wrens and the blue tits and all the other birds. And they'd all sit round there. And she'd take out some corn and she'd scatter the corn and all the birds would come down and start eating. And as they were all coming down and starting eating, the swan was there and the goose and all that. All they could see was a snake. And they all stopped. And they went, Milburger, there's a snake over there. And Milburger went over. And she looked down and there was the saddest snake you've ever seen in his life. There was tears coming out of its eyes. It was all battered and it was all bruised and everything else. And she felt really, really sorry for the snake. And she picked it up and she took it in and she bathed some of the cuts on its body. And she gave it something to eat and said, you're quite safe here. You're okay. I'll look after you. But what's happened? And so the snake told her through the snivels and sniffing away and the tears coming out of his ears and eyes and everything else. He went. And so Milburger said these words. She said, first you was a bully. And I don't like bullies. But now you know what it feels like to be a victim. And you've been bullied yourself. So I'll go and tell the children off for doing that. And I'll put a stop to it. And it will never happen again. But you are going to need something that can protect yourself. So I'm not going to give you your bite back, because you used it wrongly. But I will give you hiss. And so she picked up a hiss and she gave it to the snake. And the snake swallowed it. And now the snake has got a hiss. And so it can't bite you, but it can give you a warning. And that's what it does. And off it went. So now if you see a snake in England, or in Scotland or in Wales in an island, you won't see a snake very often. And if you do, it's scurrying away because it's afraid. But if you get really too close to it, it'll turn and it will hiss at you. Because first it was a bully, and then it was a victim, and he doesn't want to do anything wrong now. And so he just goes and hides all the time. And that's how the snake got its hiss. And that's why we have 3 snakes in the UK. The grass snake, the adder snake, and the slippery snake. And you won't see very many of them because they go and hide. Because once a long time ago, they did something stupid and it had to be put right. And Milburger the same did it. Yeah. Right. So.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Just follow Steve. We have a similar story here in the States, but instead of him getting a hiss, he got his rattles. And I'll tell that to you sometime. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's quite a well. It was one Duncan Williamson told me. And Duncan was an old traveller from up in Scotland. And we were walking through the forest one day, and it was the time for adders. And I used to work outside once. Baba, this is how clever I am. Because up in the Cotswolds, they have stone walls. And the stone walls in the springtime, you have a nest of adders. Now, all the snakes, they all get together in the winter to keep warm. and they all go and dive into these stone walls, and they all curl up together. And I was mending this stone wall, I picked up this rock, and there was a nest of adders. And I am so clever, Baba, that I run backwards faster than Linford Christie was running when he got his gold medal in the Olympics. Not only was I running backwards, I didn't even let go of the stone. I was still carrying the stone. I went backward, but it was just cold, and they weren't moving very much. They were just waking up, and the air was quite cold. It was first thing in the morning. So I put the stone back on top of them, and I painted a big white cross on it. And when I went back a couple of weeks later, I very carefully had a look under there, and they'd all gone. So they'd all gone it was springtime by then, and it was a bit warm. So that we don't often see snakes. They do shed their skins and they leave their markings around. And if you know where to look, you can track them. But you have to be quite clever. It's something you have to learn to do. And I've done that a bit. Right, so it's 40 minutes, John. Do you want another one, or how do we work? This is the first time I've done this.
I think 3 is a very fine number of stories, and it's been a very fine evening. So thank you, Mike Rust. And what we got coming up? Well, next week. Sunday, Mike is back with us again in a different capacity. He is hosting our worldwide story round for August. No, it's not August. It's July.
No, it's July.
I'm not wishing my life away for July. And then on Friday, we've got Deborah Weller, and we're staying on the other side of the Atlantic for the following Friday, which is August the 1st, I think. And that's Bavasi.
Right.
So we've got a lot of good stuff coming up. And once more, big round of applause for Mike Rust.
There you go.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you for coming and listening. It was very nice of you. Okay.
Right.
They've
Before we sign off, I have a question.
They used to put at the top now on Facebook, but they've changed the wording to custom live streaming service. Very confusing. Bye,
Lewis, you've improved, Lewis. Give me a wave. King
Louis Banks.
Give me a wave.
President King Louis
John,
Banks.
I just noticed a picture of you in the background. Did you do that?
Which one?
The picture of John hanging on the wall in the background.
Oh no, that's off a photo. There was a picture that I had done, but that was one that I didn't realize it was in show. Yeah.
No. Oh right, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
that was a present from my boy. They got one of these photographs that are converted into something.
We've had a whole load of portraits done, Baba. So we've got 6 portraits of various people, and there's 3. One of Amy, and the latest one that's been done is Anthony Gresham, John. That one, and we've got one of Taffy Thomas, one of Amy, one of me. There's 2 or 3.
No, I want one. I have to figure it out.
Yeah. So we're going to put them all together at the festival. So you don't want to, if you're knocking around where we are at the moment, someone comes up with a camera and happens to be my wife, be careful, because portraits are appearing all over the place at the moment.
Oh yeah, I'm very camera shy.
Yes.
I have heard that, Baba. Yes, I must admit.
Well, good night, everyone. Or good day, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are in this big, wide world.
Yeah, and whoever's been here and ever listens to this, thank you very much for listening. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you. And see you Sunday.
See you Sunday,
See you
6
Sunday.
o'clock UK time. Come and tell me a story instead of listening to me tell stories.
All right.
Okay.
So now I'm
that
off
was
to the
lovely
spot.
3/4 now. Right.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Take
Goodbye,
care,
family.
King Louis.
I'll see you next time.
What a handsome cow you are. All right, good
Bye.
people. See out. I'll
See
talk
out.
to everybody later. Take care. Take care,
care.
Louis. You're one of my favorite people.
You too.
And Waleed, and if it's not Waleed, who's ever been flying the Magic Carpet Ride today, Asante Sana, thank you very much. But now it's time for me to say those words. See out.